With 69% of companies admitting to not having total visibility on their supply chains, managing varying stock levels and categories can be one of your most critical challenges. Consumer buying trends are also changing as a result of the cost of living. Consumers now have greater choice over where and when they shop, and their loyalty and spending can easily be reallocated. It's not just about having stock, it's about having the right stock in your warehouse. If you overstock an item that isn't moving, you might run out of space for items that are. Wasted space could mean wasted revenue if you're not getting your stock levels right. But despite all of this, 73% of retailers say that they struggle with inventory demand forecasting. So, how can we get stock levels right in the most efficient way possible? The first thing to get right is working out what you need and how to measure that. Unless you're really lucky, your different items probably have different sales patterns. Some are seasonal, some are constant throughout the year, some have repeated peaks and troughs, and some are based on the growth and success of your customers. So to bring right back to the basics, you need to ensure you're using different forecasting methods for different items. So how can you do that? Let's have a quick look at some different methods you can use. You could simply stock to a constant minimum requirement. For example, if something sells relatively consistently throughout the year, you could simply say that you always want X amount in stock. When it comes to purchasing, you could simply buy enough to make sure that you'll be above that number. You could also look back over a set number of weeks or months and work out what the demand is for that item, and then buy stock to ensure that you meet that changing demand. If your product is seasonal, it won't make sense to look back over the last few months. So instead, you might look at the last few years' worth of sales figures and use that as a baseline for what you'll need this year. If you've got a bit more space in your warehouse, it might also be worth looking at setting a stock target based on supply. So for example, you could say, I want to make sure I always have X number of weeks worth of stock. Within OrderWise, you can set a forecasting method for each individual variant at each stock location. You can stipulate minimum or maximum requirements, any usage periods to ignore, if there are any blanks in the data. You can take into account any one-off spikes in demand that might throw off your future figures, and, best of all, the system will work out all of those numbers for you, so you don't have to get lost in a painful array of spreadsheets and manual calculations. But let's take a step further back from there. Now imagine you're running that crazy maze of spreadsheet formulas, but on top of that, you're also having to manually collate all of the sales data that goes along with it too. Not just sales data, but also data on transfers, out-of-date stock, damaged stock, quarantine stock, unpredictable lead times, minimum order quantities, and so on and so on. In today's commercial landscape, it's just too much for manual calculations. And the spreadsheets that many of us started our businesses on are clunky, slow, and error-prone. In a recent study, 62% of warehouses reported that human error from manual processes, like rekeying data, not copying across the complete data set, or forgetting a sales channel, was the #1 root cause of inventory fulfillment issues. This is why it's vital to ensure that all of your data is stored in one place. Transferring data between multiple systems is time-consuming and relies on human intervention. And we haven't even touched on what happens if you're manufacturing, bundling, or transforming items in-house. How does that spreadsheet handle endless combinations of source materials? I mean, I like spreadsheets, but the thought of that spreadsheet is enough to give me nightmares. A system like OrderWise is an all-in-one, end-to-end solution that makes investigating your data simple. Repeated jobs like purchasing and stock takes don't need the hassle of copying data from one screen to another or whipping out the calculator to do some complicated maths. OrderWise takes all of your sales from your stores, your websites, your trade counters, your sales reps, your online marketplaces like Amazon and eBay, and every other sale, and combines this with everything that's been happening in your warehouse and supply chain to give you easy access to information to ensure your business is running as smoothly as possible. Not only that, but the lead times and minimum order quantities set by your suppliers are also recorded and taken into account. You can even factor in your own company's growth or decline when basing your forecasting on previous year's performance. Right, so let's jump forwards a little bit. You now have all of your stock set to different types of forecasting methods, and all of your data is stored in one place, ready to investigate. It's time to sit down and start placing orders. You could again use a spreadsheet to work this out, but you'd be once again copying data from one system to another, cutting it hundreds of different ways, and then the chances are you'll jump on the phone and place orders with multiple suppliers. That's probably a day's work in itself. And that's if you're doing it all at once. You might be doing it in bits throughout the month, and it's easy for an order to get missed. The answer to this is simple: automation. We've read a lot of studies about automation that give different values, but it might be anywhere between 40 and 70% of companies are currently looking to digitise their procurement process. This has been expedited by recent events across the world, so if you're not currently looking at automation within your business, you risk falling behind to your competitors. All of your data is in one place now. You probably have an email address for your supplier, and they probably have your details on record too. Why do we need to do this manually anymore? The answer is, we don't. Repetitive tasks based on numbers no longer need a person to process them. Instead of hiring someone to sit lost in a spreadsheet, occasionally darting out into the warehouse to manually count items on a shelf are gone. You can instead focus that person on improving supplier relationships, sourcing new suppliers, or negotiating better deals. OrderWise has a great feature called the To-Purchase report that will allow you to free up your purchasing department's time to get on with those jobs we just mentioned. The To-Purchase report is the simplest way to ensure your warehouse is full of the stock you need to meet your customers' requirements. It uses all of the forecasting information that you stored against each item, and then uses your current stock information along with your sales information from every sales channel to work out exactly what you need to be buying. And it does all of this with the click of a single button. Genuinely, one button. It generates a report that will tell you how many you need, how that value was worked out, who you're buying it from, whether they have a minimum order quantity, and the cost. If you need to, you can edit the quantities, chosen suppliers, and costs. You can also view your purchase history of a selected item, usage charts, and supplier information, all on one screen. From here, with just one click, you can produce purchase orders for every supplier and amalgamate orders where one supplier is providing multiple items. It can even be set to automatically send these to your supplier. So, the option is there for all of your forecasting to be done automatically and consistently, and for you and your purchasing to be done in just 2 clicks of a button. The next step would be over to Goods In, and your purchasing team are back to working on relationships and costs. This all works seamlessly if the numbers are there for the system to use. But as anyone who's worked in purchasing knows, not everything is done on actual numbers. Sometimes the sales team might be having a conversation with a customer who mentions that in a few weeks or over the next few months, they'll need an increased number of items from you for a limited amount of time. So, how would you add that in without an order or a quote being officially raised? OrderWise handles this using a feature called Forward Demand Forecasting. This allows you to add demand into the system manually for a specific customer so that you can see this in your forecasted figures. If you're one of the 69% of customers who admit to not having full visibility of your supply chain, then making sure your in-house processes are as efficient and streamlined as possible is the first step to maintaining and then improving your business performance. By utilising your data correctly, you can ensure you're meeting your customers' requirements and eliminate the risks of under or overstocking items, and, in turn, making the most of the warehouse space you have available. We've seen some amazing results when customers implement the OrderWise forecasting tools and To-Purchase report in full, including a 40% increase in additional warehouse capacity and, in some cases, an 80% reduction in admin. We have case studies that attest to this on our website, socials, and YouTube channel in case you're still a little shocked at how easy it really can be. Improved customer service, better supplier relationships, holistic stock visibility, and business growth all start with making sure you're getting your stock levels right.